Been jumping from the minute I get on, taking the shirt off, showing the tattoo, screaming and hollering and all. Got the gift to come up.
They got that's the best. So they learned their moves from James Brown. So that's a compliment.
Them at a hospital who sustained injuries. The investigation led to Tyler being identified.
Mystikal, the man chosen to inherit the rebellious soul that Tupac and DMX left behind. A raspy voice powerful enough to tear through Billboard with Shake Your Ass. The wild card the entire South believed would break the East Coast and West Coast monopoly. But behind that glossy halo was a truth far more painful than anything imaginable. A violent assault that almost slammed his life shut with a life sentence. A childhood turned into a money machine by his own brother. And a $3.2 million debt that dragged him into the suffocating pursuit of the FBI. What truly destroyed Mystikal? Was it his own mistakes? Or a trap set many years before? Can Mystikal rise again? Or will this become one of the greatest tragedies Hollywood has ever witnessed? What is about to be revealed will make you question everything you ever believed about this Southern flame. Are you ready? 1. The beginning of a 20-year nightmare. Mystikal, whose real name is Michael Tyler, was born in the colorful city of New Orleans in the state of Louisiana, a place known for its extremely rich musical culture. This city gave him a completely different rhythm, inspiring him to create a sound unlike anyone else. But beyond music, he also cherished many other things about his hometown. In an interview with XXL, he said that New Orleans was very different from other places. We did not have California-style gangs, so we did not worry about that. He compared his childhood to The Cosby Show, just without the money. He recognized the poverty around him, but his mother shielded him and never let him fully feel that harshness. She did not let him know how poor they were. So Mystikal never truly felt poor. His mother, Marie Tyler, a single mom strong enough to hold up the sky, led Mystikal and his two siblings toward a completely different path from the one surrounding them. The 12th Ward was a place where many kids turned to drugs as a shortcut to survive. But inside Marie's small house, there was only discipline. Love and unbreakable rules study properly, go to church regularly, and stay away from crime. A tiny island of morals sitting in the middle of a storm zone. As he grew older, he served 6 years in the United States Army as a combat engineer. But when he returned, what he brought back was not war stories. It was rap fierce, fiery, ripping souls apart. Then he came back to New Orleans, bringing not battlefield stories, but a sound no one could imitate. At Big Boy Records, tracks like Not That or Mind of Mystikal exploded like a new weapon. A rap voice shooting out like bullets. A flow twisting through the air as if he were possessed by a wild preacher. And the New Orleans bounce beat became the stage for him to release everything he had held inside. When Here I Go spread, Master P saw in him an energy no one else in No Limit had. But when his career was rising, he went through a personal tragedy. His sister Michelle was murdered right before the album was released. She was just as talented as he was. She was an R&B artist, and she was very good. Good enough that she had collaborated with him on his earliest recordings. She was the one singing the hook in Not That. And when Mystikal signed with Jive Records, Michelle was also signed as an R&B artist. They planned to conquer the world to pull their whole family out of poverty. But everything collapsed when Michelle was murdered. Even worse, it was Mystikal's birthday. The primary suspect was Damon Neville, Michelle's boyfriend. But there was one problem. Damon was part of the Neville family, a legendary music lineage. So even though Neville confessed, he was acquitted due to lack of evidence. Mystikal bitterly said, his family had power. My family had nothing. But Mystikal could not let it go. You can understand the pain he carried. He wanted revenge. He once said, there is more than one way to skin a cat. But once again, his mother stepped in, pulling him back from the edge. She held him like when he was a boy and told him to choose a different path, a path that would not drag him into darkness, like so many men from the 12th Ward, regaining his spirit. Mystikal joined the empire, dominating the late 90s, where his voice became iconic. Then in 2000, Mystikal released Shake Ya Ass, produced by the Neptunes, and all of hip-hop shifted. The song reached number 13 on Billboard, but its cultural impact went far beyond that number. And then, in 2002, a year that should have been the year Mystikal climbed up to dominate Billboard, he instead climbed straight into The top of the list of the most shocking criminal scandals in America. 2. The fateful encounter and the truths that were never told. In the summer of 2002, when Mystikal was still a blazing Southern rap star, he called his usual stylist to his home in Baton Rouge to braid his hair. For her, it was just a normal work appointment. But the moment she stepped through the door, she had no idea she was entering the starting point of a nightmare that America would later hear about. When the door closed behind her, Mystikal immediately confronted her about suspicious checks worth $80,000 USD withdrawn from his account. She offered a few scattered explanations. But instead of calling the police the correct choice for someone who suspected financial fraud, Mystikal chose the darkest path. He handled it himself. His anger escalated so quickly that she did not realize she had been cornered. Then Mystikal issued an ultimatum that anyone hearing it would see she was placed in a situation full of tension and pressure, left with no ability to choose. The stylist who had only come to do hair was pushed into a situation with no way out. In her statement, she said that at that moment, she was too terrified to resist. But the biggest tragedy came after that, when Mystikal called his two close bodyguards, Ellis and Carter, to the house. A camera was turned on at Mystikal's request, and according to the victim, this was not a voluntary situation. She said she felt forced to cooperate because she believed the tape could be used against her if the truth came out. In her statement, she said, "I said no, but they turned off the camera. And things got worse. And that was when the truth crossed the moral line completely." According to the accusations, all three men committed serious violations against her. Mystikal and his lawyers denied some details, but by that point, the situation had gone far beyond anything that could be reversed. Afterward, Mystikal's team gave her a voluntary affidavit. She signed it in panic, and the next morning when she regained her clarity, she decided to call the police. Despite the signed paper, police still sought and obtained a warrant to search his home. When the news broke, Southern hip-hop was shaken. This was not a small scandal, not a misunderstanding. This was an accusation that, if fully convicted, could result in life in prison. And he knew it. His legal team knew it. The public knew it. And that search was the moment that flipped the entire story. Police opened the safe in Mystikal's house. And inside, among personal papers and private items, they found the tape. That tape was not just evidence. It was the most honest, brutal account of what had happened in that house. A recording that could not be twisted or denied. On July 18, 2002, Mystikal and the two bodyguards were arrested and officially charged with assault and extortion. His lawyer negotiated a plea deal, plead guilty to reduce the sentence and avoid life in prison. Mystikal agreed to plead guilty to a lower-level sexual assault. But in December 2003, he suddenly withdrew his plea after learning that the tape had been shown to the judge. Mystikal's lawyer claimed that prosecutors had broken the agreement by allowing the judge to see the tape, and they felt completely betrayed. Finally, on January 15, 2004, the sentence was delivered. Mystikal was sentenced to 6 years in prison, with strict supervision conditions after release. His two bodyguards also paid the price. Carter received 4 years, Ellis received 3 years. Mystikal was also required to pay the victim $350,000 USD. And when the entire story was revealed, people could only ask themselves, how could a man treat a woman so cruelly? How could a black man who understood struggle and injustice more than anyone be so brutal to a black woman? But then when you look back at everything, you realize there is no reason big enough to justify it. There is no villain origin story that explains such behavior. Even the tragedies in Mystikal's early life cannot excuse the monster he became on that summer night in 2002. And that was the first piece of a pattern that would repeat for the next 20 years. 3. The 20-year spiral. With no end, people always say, old habits die hard. But for Mystikal, that sentence sounded almost like a prophecy. Because what happened in 2002 clearly was not enough to make him fear the line between right and wrong. And on the night of July 30th, 2022, in the quiet house in Prairieville, Louisiana, the cycle opened again, deeper, darker, and bizarre, to the point of being unbelievable. The victim, a woman who had been with him for years, said everything started from something that seemed small: money sent for a child, a transfer request, a little irritation, and then, as if someone flipped a switch inside Mystikal, His anger exploded so fast she could not even process what was happening. Neighbors later recalled hearing screams through the walls, loud crashes like a violent storm detonating in the living room. Inside that house, according to the victim's statement, Mystikal lunged at her as if he were fighting a ghost. A punch, a choke, clumps of hair yanked out from the roots. She said his eyes did not recognize anyone, not anger about money, but a rage coming from somewhere far away, somewhere old. She tried to run, but Mystikal was faster. He snatched her phone, grabbed the keys, and locked the door, turning the entire house into a steel cage that slammed shut behind her. A familiar cage small enough that no one could hear her calls for help, large enough for her to understand she was completely alone. "Let me go," she said it many times, but he did not answer. Not one glance, not one explanation. Only heavy breathing, clenched fists, and the threatening silence of a man who was no longer himself. Then suddenly, as if someone cut the music mid-song, Mystikal stopped. He let her go and walked to the bathroom. The door closed, leaving a silence so suffocating she thought it was over. But minutes later, when the door opened, she said she saw something even scarier than violence. That was not the man I knew. It looked like another soul wearing his eyes. Mystikal walked toward her, placed his hand on her head, and began praying. Not apologizing, not explaining, but mumbling like she was possessed by something. He told her she had bad energy. Then before she could react, he grabbed a bottle of alcohol, poured it over her face, and said it was to cleanse the evil. A scene both superstitious and distorted, filled with a delusion of power to the point investigators later called it a moment of psychosis. And when she weakened in fear, Mystikal forced her onto the bed. In her statement, the victim said she tried to climb off. "I tried to run, but he yanked my hair out in a chunk. I could not breathe. I thought I was dying." Words that sounded like a crime movie. Yet they were the exact description she signed with police. The hospital later documented her injuries, bruises on her neck and chest, strands of hair torn out lying beside the bed, broken nails with blood on them. Everything matched what she said. And when police came to examine the house, they found the same scattered evidence, a trail of rage left behind. The case grew even darker when another woman came forward saying that 3 weeks earlier, Mystikal had beaten her and forced her to flee to a neighbor's home for help. Deputies had been called, but for some reason no report was filed. When this was presented in court, Mystikal's pattern of violence from 2002 to 2022 became undeniable. On July 31st, he was arrested, at first on a minor charge. But as the investigation expanded, the charges stacked strangulation, false imprisonment, robbery, and finally first-degree rape, a charge that could send him to life in prison without parole. Mystikal's lawyer requested bail, saying he has no history of domestic violence. The judge looked at the file, looked at 20 years of scandals, and shook his head. 30 minutes, that was all it took to decide no bail. 30 minutes to close 2 decades of darkness. And maybe 30 minutes for Mystikal to finally understand that this time, everything had gone beyond his control. 4. The price to pay. After the years in prison. There are moments in an artist's life that feel like the last light left on stage. It looks like it is still shining, but one small breeze is enough to blow it out. For Mystikal, that moment came after 6 years in prison. He stepped out of the facility in 2010, wearing worn civilian clothes, but his eyes carried 2 opposing emotions, a small piece of hope still surviving, and an exhaustion only people who have seen MTV lights through prison bars would understand. The rap world in those 6 years had changed, as if he had been left behind in another lifetime. When Mystikal went to prison, Southern music had only just begun spreading nationwide. When he came out, the entire rap game had shifted into the trap era, a time when former giants like No Limit and Early Cash Money no longer held absolute thrones. Mystikal's grenade flow, once considered unmatched, now stood against a new generation of artists, built on heavy 808's melodic runs and completely different rhythms. The sounds that once carried him to Billboard had become memories of a frozen era. But Mystikal still tried to return. Like an actor stepping back on stage after an accident, he clung to the one thing he still believed in: music. And the opportunity came when Birdman brought him into Cash Money Records, the home of Lil Wayne, Drake, Nicki Minaj, a dominating empire, a big enough stage to resurrect a Grammy-level name. For a few months, the comeback machine was set in motion. Festival performances, radio interviews, social media hype repeating Mystikal is back. Then in January 2012, the song Original dropped a track that made the rap community jump. Mystikal roared on the beat like in his prime Wayne and Birdman standing beside him, as if to prove the old fire was still burning. But the response was colder than he expected. The song had noise but no impact. People listened, then moved on. Trap was too dominant. Young Money was too busy making new hits. Cash Money looked at Mystikal more like a piece of the past than the future. And that is the tragedy of artists who once made the stage bow to them. They do not realize when their era has passed. But the real downfall did not come from music. It came from the home. Mystikal thought he could control. And this time, it was not a stylist, not friends, but the woman he loved. On the night of February 22, 2012, they argued over something small, something that in normal circumstances they would have ignored. But for Mystikal, normal circumstances were becoming rare. According to the statement, everything erupted too fast for anyone to understand. Minutes later, harsh words turned into sounds of objects breaking, then into actions. This was the first time a domestic violence pattern appeared, unlike the 2002 case. Unlike the 2022 case. It was a spontaneous outburst with no money, no schemes, no camera. Just two people in argument, and a dark shadow inside Mystikal that had never disappeared. Police were called. The report stated clearly domestic abuse battery. But what made everything worse was the line beneath it, violation of probation, from the 2004 case. Meaning even though the new charge was not as severe as 2002, the consequences would be far heavier. The judgment, 2 to 3 months in jail, minus the few days he had already been held. In that moment, the rap world started whispering something people had avoided saying aloud for years. He just got out, but the darkness never left him. No more trial performances, no more EP contracts, no more Cash Money album plans. The label immediately canceled interviews and schedules. They did not speak, did not issue statements. The industry's silence sometimes is a sentence heavier than the court's. Radio stations cut Mystikal's songs from playlists. Media avoided mentioning him. The rap community, no one defended him. For an artist who once blasted through the mainstream with atomic energy, this was the scariest silence of all the silence where no one asked, when will he return? The year 2012 closed like a door stuck on its hinges, not fully shut, but never able to open the same again. For Mystikal, this was not the worst scandal of his life, but it was the second crack, a crack big enough to reveal a terrifying truth. What happened in 2002 was not an accident. It was a pattern growing and one that would explode again in 2017. 5. Case File, 2017, The Casino Night. The confused statements and 18 months of detention. If the 2002 case was a clean, sharp cut that left Mystikal's career bleeding in plain sight, then the 2017 case was the opposite. A slow, lingering wound, unclear, foggy like a layer of mist, hiding the truth of every person involved. This was not the kind of case where the audience could easily pick a side. The deeper you dug, the more it resembled a maze. Every person told a different version. Every detail reflected another angle. And the truth kept slipping away like a shadow dissolving into the neon lights of that casino night. That night, Sam's Town Casino, where hundreds were laughing, drinking, dancing, gambling looked like the perfect backdrop for an early 2000s hip-hop video. Mystikal's friends were there, laughter echoing, drinks, flowing music blaring, and in the middle of it all was Mystikal. Not the star who once stood on the Grammy stage, but a man trying to feel a hint of his old spotlight. No one expected that behind that scene was a case that would drag on for 3 years, force him to sit in jail for 18 months, while awaiting trial and push his already fading image in hip-hop into even deeper controversy. According to the initial allegations, the victim referred to in the case file as Serene told police she had been raped and kidnapped by Mystikal. The news hit local broadcasts before the public even knew the details, and within hours, major outlets and the rap community jumped in. Mystikal caught another charge. Impossible. Is this another victim? But everything became confusing just a few days later, because instead of hiding or reacting defensively, Mystikal turned himself in. He walked into the police station hands up, ready to be cuffed, ready to sit behind bars. To some people, this act felt like a silent declaration. I am innocent, and I want the whole story exposed. But to others, especially those who remembered 2002 turning himself in, did not prove innocence. It was his way of controlling the situation, controlling the narrative, controlling what the news pages would say about him. Then came Serene's statements, and the case shifted from simple to maze. She said she was coerced, held against her will, assaulted in a hotel room. But just weeks later, witnesses who were at the casino told a completely different story. Some said Serene tried to stay near Mystikal the entire night, that she did not seem scared, did not avoid him, even acted overly friendly. One friend who accompanied Mystikal said Serene and him were laughing and talking like longtime buddies. Then came Serene's boyfriend, another variable. According to the file, he called the police shortly after an argument with her, which made many suspect the report might have come from jealousy or impulsiveness. Mystikal's friends, the people who saw him as family, added their own claims. They said Serene had a criminal record related to theft and fraud, that she had been drowning in debt, that she was not the innocent victim painted by the media. Every statement was a puzzle piece that did not fit. Placed together, they formed a distorted image with no beginning or end. And in the center of the storm was Mystikal, a man who once knew the glow of fame, and now sat under the cold neon of an interrogation room. The court set bail at $3 million, an amount Mystikal had no way to pay. He was taken to the Kato Correctional Center, where he would spend a total of 18 months waiting. Not waiting for trial, not waiting for a verdict, but waiting to see whether the grand jury would decide to take the case to court. 18 months for a man who once stood on stage and heard thousands scream his name were long enough to make the light of old memories feel foreign. They were 18 months with no stage, no mic, no studio. 18 months watching the rap world evolve through Instagram, SoundCloud, TikTok. 18 months to realize that his era might have ended long ago without him even noticing. And then finally, the grand jury delivered its decision, not enough evidence to prosecute. All charges dismissed. Mystikal walked out of jail once again, legally free. He smiled, he said thank you. He said he felt reborn. But what he did not know, or knew, but refused to accept, was that legal freedom is not the same as public freedom. There was no one defending him like in the early 2000s. No wave of support, no hashtags, no rapper speaking up to say he is innocent. Some said he deserved to be trusted again. Some said no one gets involved in 3 sexual cases by coincidence. And many others stayed in the middle and shook their heads. We do not know who to believe. And that was the biggest problem with the 2017 case. No one was truly innocent, and no one was truly guilty. They were all fragments of a drunken night, an argument tangled egos, and an artist carrying a mountain of past scandals. In the true crime world, this is called a gray zone case. A case where the truth does not lie at one end or the other, but floats in the middle out of reach. And for Mystikal, 2017 was not just another accusation. It was the warning bell of what was coming. A future he could not see coming, one that would bury him forever within just a few years. 6-ton industry collapse. When the entire hip-hop world turned its back, some careers die on stage, die in a breathless concert, die in a flop album or a forgotten single. But some careers die much more quietly, dying in the silence of an industry that once lifted them to the clouds. And for Mystikal, that silence was the heaviest sentence of all, heavier than any number written in a court file. After the 2017 casino case exploded, the atmosphere around Mystikal's name changed completely. It was no longer a shocking scandal like 2002 or the fall of 2012. This time the narrative was not about right or wrong. This time the entire industry, from labels to promoters, from radio to rappers who once called him brother, quietly stepped back. No official statements, no messages of support, no tweets of sympathy. Just distance pulled out in silence quickly and decisively, like someone pulling their hand away from fire. The strange part was that the 2017 case was still messy, full of questions. The victims' statements were inconsistent. Witnesses said something else. The grand jury even refused to prosecute due to lack of evidence. If this had been a young rising artist, a few hashtags like support or let the truth come out would have been enough to hold on to some faith. But with Mystikal, no one did that. No former No Limit artists came forward. No Cash Money collaborators stepped up. People in the industry looked at each other then at Mystikal's record, and they knew this was not something to risk your reputation for. Not this time. A few DJs later said they received internal emails from station managers. Limit airplay for Mystikal. Not a ban, but limit radio's polite way of saying his time is over. MTV and BET, the networks that once replayed Danger and Shake Ya Ass non-stop, quietly removed his name from their Throwback Thursday playlists. Venues where he once blew the roof off sent rejection emails with no explanation, no room for negotiation. Just one short sentence. This act does not meet our current brand direction. People in the industry instantly understood this was not about music. It was about risk. Mystikal was once seen as the wild but fun type. Wild but not dangerous. Fierce but loved for his explosive energy and unique voice. But after 3 legal cases in a row, that image evaporated. In the industry's eyes, he became a risk to reputation. A stick of dynamite no one wanted to touch. A face that made brands' festivals, or even fellow rappers ask themselves, if I stand next to him, will I get dragged down too? And when an artist gets labeled that way, their career does not die because of music. It dies because of fear. Fear of losing sponsorships. Fear of fan backlash. Fear of being tagged as someone who supports the wrong person. In an era where a single hashtag can sink an entire tour, the name Mystikal became like contaminated ground. Anyone who stood near risked being contaminated too. From that point on, Mystikal's music career froze completely. No album, no EP, no single, no comeback plan, no tour posters, no music videos. Sometimes rumors floated around, Mystikal is recording a new album Mystikal might sign with a new label. But everything evaporated as soon as it appeared. No project launched, no new song released. He became one of the rare cases in hip-hop history an artist once Grammy-nominated, once charting on Billboard, yet erased from the map as if he had never existed. Only old clips remained, blurry videos, explosive performances from years past sitting quietly in the memories of the generation that grew up with him. And perhaps the most painful part was not that the public judged him. The most painful part was that the public forgot him.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and the truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.